Well, I'm going down the
Hey folks, how are you all doing today? So right now we're going to talk about Billy String's Bound to Ride. Now I have to say this first up. If you haven't heard Peter Rowan do Bound to Ride, it's basically Billy's break. Peter Rowan wrote Bound to Ride and Billy Strings is sort of doing a tribute. So if you haven't seen that, go watch it. It's important to learn that bluegrass history and to know where the songs came from and where the breaks came from. But yes, today specifically we're talking about the way that Billy Strings plays it. Now so many people have asked for this. I've seen it in the comments and I've seen it a lot in the live streams as well. Lots of people asking for it. And I actually gave out this tab to a couple people who were nice enough to email me and say, hey, do you have a copy of this? And this is actually a revised version. So if you're one of those people, this is updated. So if it's slightly different than the tab I gave you, that's what's going on. If you don't know about the live streams, we do them every Tuesday, noon Eastern time. I hop on there. I take community suggestions and we transcribe something live. I never know what's going to happen. And we just do it right there live. Sometimes I get a little stumped. Sometimes I don't. Those tabs normally make it on the website in a week, a couple weeks. But yeah, if you never come to one, please show up. They're super fun. Now, before we dig into the play-by-play of this, we do the full breakdown of this Billy Strings break. I do want to show you a couple things that are going to make this break a lot easier if you've never practiced them before. So let's do that first. Let's hop into those techniques. So the first thing we got to talk about is the guitar setup. I have my capo on 5th fret and I'm in drop D. If you don't have any of that going on, none of this is going to make sense. The first thing we're going to talk about is cross picking. Billy does a lot of cross picking in here. And if you don't know a whole lot about cross picking, you should check out my video called What is Cross Picking, where I break that down and I talk about the different approaches to it. It seems like what we might want to do for this break is use alternate picking rather than down, down, up. Now, there's a specific way that Billy sets up his cross-picking phrases, and I've turned that into a little bit of an exercise that you can repeat. So I'm going to put that up on the screen. Practice this a little bit if you've never done it before. The next thing I want to show you is the almighty pentatonic scale. So this time we're talking about a D major pentatonic scale. This pentatonic scale is kind of a little wonky when we're close to the open strings. We can't get every note that we want, so it looks a little bit different than most other pentatonic scales, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and show that to you. Go ahead, practice this if you've never seen it before. And the last thing that I'm going to show you is something that might be a little confusing to some of you if you're new to bluegrass or new to guitar, and that's that there's different ways to play the same chord. So for instance, Billy is using 2 different versions of the D chord throughout this entire arrangement. So even though this is very simple, here are 2 different D chords that you should probably be familiar with if you've never played them before. They look like this. So now that you've seen all that, we're going to listen to the break again. Please don't skip this step. This is a very important part of becoming a better musician. I just showed you some very important parts of the song, but I showed them just as the raw materials. I want you to watch the break again, and I want you to look for those raw materials. See when Billy is using those different components and how he assembles all of them. And then we'll do the play-by-play. I promise, we'll do that big breakdown. We'll talk about every measure. But first, I want you to work your brain a little bit. Listen to that break. All right, time for the breakdown. Let's do it. Once again, capo 5, drop D. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense. So the very first measure actually isn't a full measure. It's a pickup measure. And if I'm counting it like I would if it was a real measure, this would be 3 and 4 and B1, right? So 3 and 4 and 1. It really helps to know where B1 is because you know where the important pulse is. If you're not feeling that in the right spot, it might feel a little weird. So after we get to that point, we're using our cross picking that we talked about earlier. If you practice that exercise, you should be ready to go. Here we go. So 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Nice. So there's our pickup measure and our very first real measure. Continuing on, this next measure looks like this. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1. So you can see there's kind of a... I'm not sure if I call it response, but there's a sort of a line leading up and a line leading back down. And then later on, right? Please excuse my out of tune drop D. Here we go. Cool. Going on to the strumming. So you can count this. If you counted it, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Right, and that finishes off the line. It would take us on to the next line. But this is kind of something that's easier to feel. So why don't you listen to me strum this? You see how every single time I did that, there was like a small nuanced difference? It's because it's strumming. It's not worth trying to grab all these little details, which specific strings he's just perfectly hitting, because it's going to be a little loosey-goosey, right? So the tab is really helpful to get some of that time, to get some of the chord shapes, to get some of those details. But ultimately, a lot of times when it's strumming, you kind of just have to feel it. Cool, let's go on to the next line. This should look very familiar because it's just the same thing again. So I'm going to play it for you real quickly. There you go. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2. Cool, we're on to line 3. Line 3 is actually slightly different because he's not going to strum that section. He's going to do a little bit of cross picking again. And this time he's kind of jumping strings. It makes it a little difficult. So here we go. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1. All of that is the same still. Moving on to this next measure, I have this. Kind of interesting. Once again, I'm just alternate picking this up. If I was going to speak the pick strokes, it'd be down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Right? It's just down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down. All those pick strokes are going to be written in the tab. Hopefully that helps you out. If you need a reminder on the pick strokes, the little house looking guy is down. The little arrow looking guy is up. All right, continuing, we're on the 4th line now. It sounds like this. Very similar again, right? 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. Remember when we're cross-picking here, I'm using all alternating pick strokes. I think it's easier in this case. The second half of this line, right, we get into some strumming, some real boom chuck. But the first thing he's going to do is he's going to put a rhythm push on beat 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and... It's pretty basic strumming if you're used to the rhythm push. So normally in beat 1 of this measure, beat 1 and 2 of this measure, we would expect boom chuck on beats 1 and 2. A boom followed by a chuck. But in this case, he just puts a big strum that eats up beats 1 and 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Make sure you got 2 up strokes on the line at the end. Up, up. Next line is another rhythm push. B1 again. It's kind of a dirty rhythm. He lets go of the boom chuck feeling a little bit. This is another one that it probably just helps to feel. You can listen to the recording. You can get that in your head. I know that, man, rhythm is just hard to write in the tab. It just never feels quite right. Same thing. Loosey-goosey, baby. Let's look at the second half of this line. We've got... So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and... This is the chord shape that I showed you earlier, right? It's like a D chord, but instead I got my finger right here, right? Instead of making this little triangle, instead I'm holding this F sharp note on 4th fret of the D string. And I'm going to hammer onto that first using my index finger. My index finger is going to come down to fix the chord. That's the line. Moving on. Same thing again. Lots of strumming, right? Real rhythm feeling. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4. I doubt that any of you will have serious trouble with that. Once again, if you have trouble with the rhythm, listen to the recording. This next move, I love. He's got a 2-finger D chord right here. He's going to slide it up and back down. If you try to do a 3-finger D chord, it's not going to work. And then this is an interesting moment because he gets out a lot of this with one pick stroke, and you might have to fight some instincts to do that. Maybe you don't want to do that, but to make it feel like Billy Strings, you're going to have to do that. So that's what's going on right there. Slide up, then this is all one pick stroke. Take your hand off, hit another pick stroke as we move on to the next line, which sounds like this. It's a little bit of a cross-picking feeling. He's actually doing 4-note cross-picking, which is really hard to do with multiple downs. To do with like a sweep, you tend to lose that bluegrass feeling. So I would alternate pick this again. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and pick strokes are down, down, up, down, up, down, up. Moving on. Right, 1, 2, 3, and 4. No whammies. This is the cool thing he keeps doing over the G chord. It's kind of like a G chord going to a G minor. Love that line. Absolutely love it. This 4th fret that he's going to in the next line is part of this D chord again. So here's the G to G minor again. The strumming again. And here's what I was talking about when I gave you that D major pentatonic. All of that is just for the very, very end of this. And he plays some more classic bluegrass lines. They sound like this. Cool. So that first one, I'm sliding from 3 to 4. I'm using my ring finger, because after I slide, I'll be in position. Everything will be right. I have 2, 3, 4 under my fingers. Excuse me. That's only need your index finger for that lick. And you're good to go. That's the whole thing. That's the full breakdown. All right, now that we've gone through measure by measure, I'm going to let you see the footage of me playing the break with the tab up ahead so you can play along. Remember, this is pretty fast, so it's probably going to be too fast for you on your first couple of read-throughs. It was definitely too fast for me when I did my very first read-through. So you want to hit that settings wheel down below, and you want to go to playback speed and change this to like half or 75 or 25, whatever you need to get it slow enough to play all the way through it. Then you can start pushing that speed a little bit higher and higher. I hope that helps you out, but here is the break. Good luck to you. Have fun. Now, if you like taking a lesson from the biggest, baddest Billy Goat in the barnyard, please consider like, comment, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. There is a join button down below. If you want to become a member of the channel, that means you get custom emotes for live streams. And also, we're trying to do members-only live streams. That hasn't worked out yet, but I really want it to work out. There's also the website, lessonswithmarcel.com. This tab will be on there for free, along with a bunch of other Billy Strings tabs, totally free, I promise. You can also sign up for Skype lessons there. There's a bunch of cool merch. You guys know what to do. It's the internet. Everyone's doing the same thing. Just, if you want to support, do it. Thanks a bunch. I'll see you next time.
When that train comes tumbling down from the mountains cold, we ring them bells at the crossroads through the valley below.